All right, so let's get started. Welcome to Business Uncensored. My name is Ryan Shearer. This show is about business, not anybody's specific business, but about business and the things that we face in an unfiltered, stripped down look. We're allowed to curse, we're allowed to say what we want, we're allowed to shit talk industries because we're going to do it in the utmost truthful manner. Today, I have Roseann with me. And I'm going to have her introduce herself because she knows about all of her accolades better than I do, and I'm just going to screw them up. So take it away.
I'm so glad to be here, Ryan. We're going to have a saucy conversation. I know that we are, but my name is Dr. Roseann Capanna-Hodge. Wear many hats, but I am, the founder of Dr. Roseann LLC, the Global Institute, Neurotastic, and a bunch of other companies. I'm a second generation entrepreneur, but really I'm also a mom of two neurodivergent kids. And I have been a mental health trailblazer and expert for 3 decades. And I use only natural science-backed solutions to calm the brain and help people self-regulate.
So that self-regulation is the key, isn't it? Because we live in a
It is the
world where
key.
we can self-medicate. We can not self-medicate. We can doctor medicate. We have all sorts of distractions and tools and drugs. And I'm in Missouri, so like weed is legal. So all of a sudden, all my friends are high all the time, So, but that self-regulation is probably the key to all of it, when it comes to being successful in business and just in life.
Yeah, and it starts, right as an infant, right? And if we enter this world into a place where, maybe our environment is unhealthy or unsafe or our parents are dysregulated, we then struggle with self-regulation. It's always something we can learn. It's always something that we can achieve through really intentful practice and daily practice, but we all need to work on regulating our nervous system. I mean, the world is a shit show. I mean, it is really
It,
a highly
it,
stressed world in America
it
in
yeah.
particular.
So my first question before we base this is the baseline. What is a healthy environment? Because we hear
Yeah.
so much. So I know it's got to be stripped down. There's got to be some pillars to it without opinion that all of you doctors and people agree. There's just
Yeah.
certain pillars. So what is a healthy environment?
Well, when we talk, let's start with babies, right? So,
Hmm.
what a healthy environment for baby? We know this through research, and if anybody follows me, everything I do is research informed. I'm super research nerd. So when I talk about things, know that I've studied it. I'm distilling it down and helping you to understand it. But what we know about infants, right, is when infants are physically cared for. So you cry, you're picked up, you're given, love and care, you're going to have a much more regulated nervous system. So, unfortunately, many children in the world don't always start out in life like that, right? They might be born in homes when, parents aren't available mentally, um, and physically to comfort a child. So that's where it starts. That's the basis of a healthy nervous system starts with that. And then there's life factors, right? Like what happens to you? Are there traumatic events, right? Is there something that has taken away your safety? That becomes probably our greatest threat to our mental health over time. And then within that, how available is your primary caregiver to you is another major factor in self regulation. So, what's actually happening today is that parents are spending too much time on their devices and they're actually not having eye contact with their kids. We see this through research. And they're not getting the same kind of cueing. So the baby's not smiling. They're always looking through a lens of a camera. They're not actually getting appropriate feedback. So kids need contact. They need, loving care. They need to be picked up when they're crying. And they also need engagement, right? So that's where it all starts from. And all those different pieces that happen over a lifetime, whether you've been hurt or not hurt, you go through something major. We know that when people, adults, right? I worked with people from 9/11, and I actually was one of 9 approved providers for Sandy Hook. And so I've had a lot of work with trauma. And we know that what you bring to the table in trauma is what helps you to get through it. So the healthier you are walking into a trauma, you're much more likely to be able to get through that. Why? You're a regulated nervous system. You've known safety. So it's really about feeling safe and ultimately, having good role models too, not perfect role models. No parent should ever strive for perfection. I always say 80% great. You're going to be okay. Your kids are going to be great if you're doing 80% great.
So one of the things you keep saying, and I noticed this when we met in person last week, is you keep saying nervous system. Now we
Yeah,
have this correlation with mental health being the brain, but a lot of people don't understand what the rest of your nervous system has to do with your mental health. So could you kind of explain that connection real
sure.
quick
Oh,
before
I'd
we
love
move on?
to. I love talking nerdy brainy stuff. So so we have something called an autonomic nervous system. It's called an ANS. And it's our stress response system. And it's there to help you get through anything stressful, whether it's real, like, somebody try to steal your car, something extreme, or it's perceived like, oh, it's Monday, whatever it is, right?
Right.
Your nervous system kicks into gear. And so at our base is something called your parasympathetic nervous system. And that's where your nervous system should be. If you have a healthy nervous system, it goes into a relaxed state. When it's super relaxed, I call it the hot tub state. But when you experience a stressor like, wow, oh my gosh, somebody just tried to steal my car, your nervous system shoots up into a sympathetic dominant state. Now, if your nervous system is working correct, it's going to go up, deal with the stressor, your cortisol is going to start shooting, all these different things in your body start jumping into action to help you get through the stressor. Then it goes back down. Okay. And I always try to say, like, if you, it's that moment when you almost like got into a massive car accident and you're driving for the next 10 minutes, and every once in a while you go, holy shit, I almost just got in a car accident.
Right? Yeah.
Um, it's that kind of feeling, right? But what's happening, Ryan, is that people are dealing with compounded stressors, right? Again, real or perceived, overworking, you know, doing things, to not healthily deal with their stress. And your nervous system is moving into a constant state of sympathetic dominance. Now, at the height of sympathetic dominance, when you are in maximum overload and your nervous system is just in a hyper state, you're physiologically can only experience fight, flight, or freeze. And the more your system is in a sympathetic dominant state, the more it's going to react to things. It's going to overreact to things. So, and there's a whole thing. We have our brain, and we know what happens in the brain. You get these, cortisol starts kicking in, your brain starts working, your neurotransmitters aren't working in the right way. But it affects our whole system, and our gut is a big part of this. And we have a connection between, we hear so much about our gut brain connection, but there's something called the vagus nerve, and it connects the two, and there's a bidirectional influence. There are many systems in our nervous system, in our body, that have to deal with stress. And that's why so many people who are in a constant stress state they get physical ailments, they get, they break down physically. Many anxious people, when they have anxiety or OCD for a long time, they then get depression because it's a physical depression. You kind of run out of all your gas in your body. So, we have to tend to our body and our mental state. And the two of them are, of course, we know they're intertwined and affect each other.
And and I got a little side question to this too,
Sure.
because then I want to get into the main part of it. So I know that tomorrow I'm 46 years old, and I'm in entertainment. I do this. I watch TikTok. I do whatever. But everybody's got triggers. Everybody's trauma. Everybody's whatever. But before we move on, do you feel that those words are legitimately being used, or are they being characteristically overused? Because I see that a lot in the generation below me, that everything's a trauma, everything's a trigger, everything's a whatever. And me being Gen X, I was just kind of, you take a big dose to suck it up and move on no matter what happened. So is it a generational shift? Are they misusing a word? Can you kind of, because we have listeners that are that young. So can you kind of bridge that gap
Yeah.
professionally for me?
Well, it's an interesting question, really, quite honestly. And I think there's multiple parts to that to be unpacked. And I think ultimately the younger generation is much more comfortable talking about mental health. And I love they're much more supportive of their friends. Like you could be like, dude, I'm having an anxious thing. And the other kids are like, okay, it's very common. Here's what I think is the problem. So we are talking about mental health, but we're not talking about solutions. We're not talking about what people need to do besides meds, besides smoking pot every day. That's not medicinal when you're smoking a pot every day,
Hmm.
people. It has a we know through research it damages the brain. Like it's going to actually feed into your probably create depression for you. So we are more open about it, but we're not really digging into what are the lifestyle components. What do you need to do? It's not like, wow, I do this one thing and it disappears. And I think that's part of why people say, oh, that's triggering or that's this, or I don't really want to work 60 hours and I just started this new job or whatever. There's a lack of stress tolerance in our
Hmm.
generation because of bubble wrap parenting. And parents don't want their kids to experience anything negative, which is the worst thing you can do because then they become adults who can't tolerate and can't problem solve. And we want our kids to experience stressors that are obviously not putting them in danger. And then we want them to be like, wow, empowered that they got through it, think through what the answers were. Maybe it's something that they realize they can handle, or maybe it's something that they realize, wow, there's a solution. I could have taken a different path. But our job is for parents is to not shield them from everything negative. It's actually to let them independently manage these things. So when you're talking about a generation that talks about these things, again, I think there's the positive that they're talking about it. The negative is they don't have skills to deal with these things. And our generation is teaching them you just need a pill. And
Yeah,
that's
I
not the
think
answer.
because this is not clinical. I have had zero clinical psychology. Is that my generation got punched in the face for everything that we did, right? It was a very brutal, very swift generation,
I'm
right?
sorry, I must
Especially
have been
in
the
the
one who punched you because I was the puncher.
yeah, right, right. And
Yeah.
so we raised our kids in a totally passive way, and
Right.
we would try to take all stress away from them. So now when they're adults, I have a child that can't, they're an adult, and like I still, when we go to the restaurant, have to order for them because they can't face
That's
them,
right.
because I've tried to take all stressors away from them, so even common life seems to fuck them up.
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
Yeah.
and the level of bubble wrapping on these freaking kids until they get to college, the number one reason
Yeah.
why kids leave college is, right? Mental health.
Uh, yes.
Mental health is the number one reason, and they just don't have an ability to manage it. And we're doing them a disservice because they can manage it. We're just not teaching them the ways to do it. And so, I think, what happens is kids become adults and they realize they're uncomfortable and we all got our shit and
Yeah.
everybody's got it. You got to deal with it. I mean, you and I talked about that. But, I think that some kids realize, wait, I see Becky being able to do this. I can do
Hmm.
this. How are you doing this,
Right.
Becky? Right? So whether they learn through osmosis, when you're highly distressed, you need formal therapy. You know that, Ryan.
Yes. Oh, of
Yeah.
course.
I mean,
You
you
know,
just do.
because as an employer, and like I said, I'm in my 40s, and I'm barely Gen X, not quite a millennial, just kind of. My parents got frisky just soon enough that I can be a Gen X, not a millennial. And but I know that now that I hire people that are in um, that very early millennials, like in and then the Gen Z, which are now entering the workforce at at early 20s and stuff. Man, they're hard to manage sometimes. They are just hard to, because stressors that I grew up with. Because one of my first jobs, when I was 16 or 17, I worked in a feed store. I live out here in redneck nowhere, and I worked in a feed store. And man, you just killed yourself. That's what you did. And the people you looked up to, and the people that were your bosses, and the people that were mainstay, and the people that destroyed their body 20 years in and did the things. And now like I'm asking somebody to sit at a desk and push buttons, and that's stressful to them. So I can't, it's hard in business to understand the psychology of this, because I do not want that. That's why I'm asking you up front, because you have way more qualifications. Because I think the technical term is, I don't think they're all pussies. I just think that they need to figure, like we don't understand what exactly it is they're going through and why. But I think that maybe gives them a lot of bad rap as well. But on the other side, I still need productivity. So it
Yeah.
wraps that and it goes over, which goes into that stressful work environment.
Yeah, and I do a lot of stuff with corporate and even just
Yeah.
being a business owner and
Yeah.
having one business where I was really scaled up and sort of am scaling down for a variety of reasons, including employees.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that it is hard to find the match. It's not to say that all employees are bad. I have like an unbelievable team, 100% women, Ryan. And I have a good way of understanding that they're mission driven, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
do mission driven work, so I can easily attract people. But even when that within that, right? Often I've been very happy to mentor and hire young people, but sometimes they come in, and this has happened numerous times where they're like, I really thought I wanted to do clinical work, and I don't. Right. And I'm like, it's okay. Right. And I think we all do that, and that's okay. But hiring and getting that right fit is becoming increasingly hard. And I think that is for, again, a variety of reasons, stress tolerance, also unrealistic expectation. I recently had a young person that was like, it's her first year out of school and she wants to make an inordinate amount of money. And I was like, honey, you went into psychology, you have a 4-year psychology degree. That's not where the money is. You should have
Yeah.
gotten an accounting degree.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, "Good luck." I mean, not to say, and please know I'm a manifester, but, like, you can't go into a certain industry and then just be like, "Well, I think you should pay me this." Well, there's industry standards, what is it? Helping your person that you're gonna hire really understand the role can be incredibly, incredibly helpful, for both of you. So, up until ChatGPT, I had a damn good Google form that screened people out, but now they can just answer the questions at GPT.
they They can, because when you get into that generational thing, to kind of back up, I think is right. Expectations, right?
Yeah.
You have to set those expectations, and any solution is going to come from both sides. That it can't just be as Gen X becomes the new boomer and the new leader of
Mhm.
workforce and the new
Yeah.
hire or whatever. We're going to be less, and we're going to be a little bit better than boomers, but we're still going to have some of that mentality. We have to kind of change our expectations too, and know that it is good that they're talking about mental health more. It is good that they're asking for more, and we don't have to guess and wonder if Bobby in accounting is happy or if he's gonna lose his shit and trash everybody's car. Like we kind of have got past that, I feel. But then on the other side, you're right. The new generation comes in with such high end expectations that there are no managing those things. So as they
Yes.
move through that workforce and as they move through that, we're getting this different sort of unworkability, that everybody gets branded as the bad guy instead of us having some sort of comprehension. And if I
Yeah.
remember back to when I was 20 and 25, yeah, I thought old people were assholes too, and I wouldn't listen to them either. So I
I never
don't
did.
really,
I never did, Ryan. I hung out with people of all ages. Like I came out like this, like
yeah,
opinionated and clear about what I want. I was raised by a woman who parents who
yeah,
taught me no limits and also said, "Don't give a crap what, other people think." Like, my parents are
Eh,
like, "You never give a crap what people think. Like, you
it,
don't have
it
to be mean, but speak your voice." Very, very empowering for a young person, especially a woman, to
yeah,
have that, and I think, again, we wanna raise our kids to be strong and respectful,
mhm.
but also my parents taught me to work my ass off. So, they weren't like, "It's an easy ride." That's just I think that's a missing part today, that everything feels easy and should be easy. Like everybody should have a Mercedes. No, doesn't work like that.
No. you have to find that balance. One, to my point, this may surprise you, but I've kind of always had a problem with authority. Number two
Oh,
is,
shocking, Ryan.
yeah, shocking, right? Two is, yeah, like I am all for things being easier. I think that's what we're supposed to do with the next generation, is make it not so shitty for them. Like, get rid of the shitty stuff for us and make it not so shitty for them. I don't think the shitty thing makes them a better person. I think we kind of have a better way to teach them those things. Like the
Absolutely,
sink or swim
100%.
mentality. We still need to teach that mentality of, oh, you're going to learn how to swim, just throw you in the pond. Hopefully you can swim. We still need to figure out a better, less shitty way to teach those values, but we still need to teach and pass on those values to the next generation. But at the other side of it, it's really hard. I lost my train of thought there for a second. So yeah, just totally dumped out my train of thought.
That's okay. Passing on to the next generation you were talking
Yeah.
about. Like, we have to find a way. What's the
Oh,
healthy
yeah.
way, to do that?
What's the healthy way to pass that on? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the healthy way isn't to bubble wrap. It is to let your kid to have failures, not always to rescue them with everything, every assignment, every conflict. I'm not saying, you let your kids be in constant conflict, but also the way you talk to them, right? Like, how do we get people to be problem solvers? We don't give them the answers. We ask questions like, oh, how did you got through that? We want everybody to be good decision makers, whether you're dealing with employees, right? And the majority of businesses in the United States are small businesses. So, these are really important conversations. Like, what are you telling the person you're hiring? Is it in writing? I find most small businesses don't put it in writing. Like, hey, you want a raise? Here are the next stages. I do that.
Right.
Like, this is
That
what
should
you
be
have to
that should
do.
be a standard thing for everybody.
But they all say, "Oh, I didn't know how to have a business." Yeah, I know I'm a second generation business owner, right? And I got to
Yeah.
hear a lot of cool conversations, like some crazy stuff too. Like my dad, you don't know my dad, but he's a hot ticket. He's 85, but you would never know it. And in the 80s, he had an employee that showed up with an assault weapon. And my dad just went up to him and was like, "We love you. You can't hurt people. I'm going to help you." And he didn't get shot and he put the assault weapon down. I mean, I wouldn't recommend that, but that's what
No,
happens when
that's
you own a business. When it's pre all of this time, right? And being able to, do those kind of things. But when you own a business, you are responsible for a lot, and there are many things. And choosing your employees wisely is very important, and it starts with you. You can't pass that buck to anybody else but you, and it's how you set the tone. What are those expectations? Are you a good, clear communicator? Do you have regular meetings? Do your people know what you're doing and what your goals are? Don't just hold it inside. Let them know what they're achieving, and also outline ways for them to potentially earn or move up or do different things, because we want happy employees, right? And movement is a big part of that.
How do you feel that we should handle so quiet quitting has become a big thing with the lower generation or the whatever, and the upper generation is us just think it's in productivity or whatever. So so we know on our side as Gen X and stuff what we need to do to kind of help to get them to understand. Back to the point that I'd forgot earlier is, no, it's not easy. Everybody's not going to get a Mercedes. It has to be that. For the younger people listening, you don't get handed a Mercedes. You get a Buick with 150,000 miles on it that your parents pay for, and you have to work yourself up. Now, I'm all for free healthcare. I'm all for helping people with mental health. I'm all for those things. But what advice would you give the younger people entering the workforce that are like, I don't want to do it. I just want to get handed my stuff, because that's not the world we live in. How are the ways that younger people can kind of form their mind and look at a job and look at their place? Because they're only hurting themselves. Because the boomers have all the money, Gen X is inheriting all the money, and everybody down is just fucked. So you better work harder. So how does that generation resolve their mind and understand the world they live in and get on that capitalistic path?
Yeah. Well, first of all, this is America. And I
Yeah.
am the daughter of Italian immigrants who made a boatload of money. And I also hang out with a lot of immigrants, and you really can make yourself here like nowhere else in the world. And this is why immigrants come here. But the key is to find something you're passionate about and you're damn good at. Like, are you pouring yourself in? I mean, I am such a geek about what I do. I have Google alerts coming to me every day. I'm like everything I do is related to mental health and wellness, physical health. When everyone's like, "Oh, did you read this book?" No. I'm only reading books in my industry because that's what I want. I do business books too. So, are you really finding that thing? And I do believe it doesn't matter if it's art or if it's cooking or if it's business, you can find an area to make money at, right? Are you going to learn it at that deep level and really go deep? I'm not saying just one thing. I've had a lot of, employees where I hire overseas and they say they know something and they don't, right? But are you going to spend your time on it to really get in there? And maybe you need to intern and get a mentor and all that other stuff. And then what can you do to monetize that? Right? Is this working for somebody else? Is this setting up your own business? Whatever that path is, you need to take it and stay the road. But the key to that, because I believe everyone should do things that they love, right? Um, I believe that you can find that. And I think that is really critical. Don't rely on somebody else. I know that, like, as a woman, like in the 90s, I had so many marriage offers of like super wealthy people. I could have married them and never worked a day in my life. I just didn't even think like that. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. So don't rely on anybody else but yourself and stick to the path and don't give up. I listened to this great interview the other day, and I apologize because I know nothing about sports, but it's a sports reporter who tried out 5 times to be a cheerleader, I think for the Dallas Cowboys. And she was like, "I was in my 20s, I was fit, I wanted to do it, and it sounded so silly. I was already a journalist, but I was like, I'll be damned if I'm gonna give up, and I want this opportunity." And she just kept up leveling her game, and 5 times she got in. So, I think that's the lesson, that you've gotta work through the failures, but you have to actually really own that expertise, and that you're not going to be an expert in 2 years. But if you're spending a couple years on something and really digging deep, wow, your knowledge base can really increase, right? Remember when we learned something and you're like 2 years in, all of a sudden the shift
Right.
happens,
Yeah. But how unhealthy, because my wife yells at me all the time for this, right? Because I eat, live, and breathe my industry,
Yeah.
uh, which currently is podcasting, used to be marketing. So yeah, I'm constantly looking at stuff, looking at new innovations, looking at new technologies that can help our industry to help us. Because our company, and this is not a plug, but our company has a booking service. We edit, we produce, we host, we whatever. So there's a lot going on, and I'm kind of the center to a lot of this. So I'm constantly and so she's a 9 to 5er, and she's an artist. This painting right there, she painted it, and she likes to paint art, and she side hustles art. She's a very creative person, and so am I. She doesn't get why at 10 o'clock at night I'm reading about podcasting and I'm reading about this or this new tech innovation, and why it's so hard for me to stop working for a weekend and spend with her or whatever. But I also know that sometimes that really I need to stop and I need to break away. So for people that do eat, live, and breathe their industry
Yeah.
like me and you, what are some of the things that we can do to jump off that train,
Yeah.
or to do this in the most healthy way possible? Because it almost borderlines on an obsession.
There's so many things that I have to say about this. So I think number one, um, it's all about your schedule, right? So even when I do my work, I batch my work. So batch
Mm-hmm.
working and spending certain time. So creating spaces for certain things on your calendar is critical, and you need to schedule fun. So you have to put on getting together with your friends, or you have like today, it's pretty early. I'm going over to my friend's house after this. So like I'm doing it. Now if I didn't have it on my schedule, I would actually just go on and record my own solo podcast. So you need to make sure that you're doing it and you're not canceling it. and then on top of it, what are you doing on the daily to regulate your nervous system, right? Are you doing breath work every day? Like, I do so many things throughout a day, from starting with, I try to do breath work before my feet touch the floor. At When I wake up, I stretch twice a day. In a great day, I've gotten in 30 minutes to 1 hour of exercise every day on top of my stretching. So what are you doing, and put it in your calendar, and make it a non-negotiable. Don't let work override that. I think that's really critical. And I also think we, as entrepreneurs, and our brain is always working, and we're both Aquarians, that means our brain doesn't turn off, that you got to prioritize sleep. So you're going to be more likely to jack yourself up if you're not sleeping. And certainly, when you've had a trauma background and you grew up in a situation where there's some chaos, your nervous system wants to be in a rev state. So you need to do extra work to counter that, so that you can be good, you can feel good in the quiet. Because if we're not feeling good in the quiet, then we have to ask ourselves why. Not to sound like a therapist, but I am.
Well, I mean, you
You
are.
know?
Uh,
Yeah.
but I get that. But yeah, that sleep thing has eluded me since like mid 2000. So,
Yeah.
it's one of
Are
those
you getting
things that
enough
I don't.
magnesium? Are you taking, like, some
I
GABA?
you you could Google or AI or whatever every remedy to sleep, short of just having somebody choke me out every night,
Yeah.
and nothing has worked.
Yeah.
So it's
Some
it's the
people
thing
have
that
insomnia, but you might not
yeah,
be doing the sleep hygiene, like disconnecting.
it
Yeah. I know.
yeah,
I know.
I try. But even
I
though
I
that,
have
like,
to be tight with mine.
there's probably some shit in there that worked, and I just didn't give it a full enough chance. But I kind of have this problem with, if it's this hard to be alive, fuck it, I'm not going to do it. That if I want to be in bed by 10 and I have to start winding down by 5, and I can't have
No,
this
no, no,
piece of
no.
think, or I got to do that, or I just like, all right, I'm just going to be an insomniac. I'm horrible about that. That if there's diminishing returns on the solution, I'll just deal with the problem.
Yeah. It's not a joke. I mean, I have to
Yeah.
really be, um definitely when I'm out with my friends, I'm like, "Oh, forget it. We're not sleeping. I'm doing things." But I
Oh
know
yeah.
what interferes with my sleep, and I know what helps me to sleep. And
Yeah.
I definitely try to prioritize it, because as you age, Ryan, your hormones shift for guys too.
Hmm.
And you also, when you're an entrepreneur or you're working a lot, you're going to push yourself to that sympathetic dominance. So there's a lot of things you're going to have to do to counter it, so that you can get
Yeah.
quality sleep. And some people, hate to say it, don't need as much sleep, but we all are supposed to get about 7.25 hours of sleep, just so you know.
I I know, and I don't
I
remember the
know.
last time I got that was. That,
I know.
it's like this morning. Like, I woke up, I went to bed. I did okay last night. I fell asleep about 11ish, and I woke up wide awake, ready to go at 5:15. And I mean, it's just, there's no going back to sleep. I try,
No.
and I lay there and I start thinking about
That's
work, or I
pretty
start
good.
thinking
That's a
about
pretty good
this,
amount of sleep, Brian, just so you know. That's
and
not too bad.
yeah, that's about what I sleep, and
Yeah.
those are that's like the maximum. Now I remember, and this kind of, we can edit this out or whatever. I remember that we used to, like, according to history and whatever, we used to sleep in two phases. We would sleep for 4 hours, we'd get up, we'd mill around for a couple hours, we'd go back to sleep for 4 hours, and the Industrial Revolution screwed all of that up. And that's, if I can sleep like that, I can sleep great in like 2 4 hour chunks. Perfect. Or the other thing, honestly, and maybe I'm just a high rev individual, that if I stay up for, let's say if I stay up for, because your cycle is supposed to be 16 up, 8 down, if you just want to make the math easy. If I do 21 or 24 up, then I'll sleep like 8 to 10 hours, and then I'll go.
Wow.
But the world doesn't work that way. Like,
Mm-mm,
and
mm-mm.
I've gotten into that pattern working from home when I was doing whatever, and if I could ever maintain that, I would be okay. But this whole 8 to 5, everybody gets up at 7 and has the same schedule. I'm just not built that way. So
No, no. And again, everyone's a little different. You are sleeping about 6 hours, so
yeah,
that's not terrible.
yeah,
That's actually okay.
yeah.
Like, I have friends that brag
Uh,
that they sleep 12 hours, and I think, "Oh my gosh, you're wasting the day," you know?
Oh yeah, yeah. My wife is like a bird. It's dark. She's asleep. It's like, I mean, that does do good because between like 9:30 and midnight, the world is mine. But
That's right.
but to kind of
You
finish
own the
it,
world.
yeah. To kind of finish up our generational talk here, which is kind of what we ended up doing, is what healing tips for both sides could you give to resolve some of these problems? Like, so when I hang up here and I have to go to my production crew, which predominantly is below 25 or whatever,
Yeah.
and they expect me to pay them for half a day's worth of work, and I expect 2 days worth of work out of that half a day's worth of work. How can we resolve this and understand our expectations, and we both be better employees and bosses with that generational disconnect?
Yeah. Well, first of all, everyone does work at different speeds, and you do have to really make sure your employee is really able to do that job. Sometimes I hire people and it seems like they can do it, but they really can't, right? So that's a big part of it. But you need SOPs, right? So I think a lot of businesses don't have standard operating procedures of what the task is and the steps to it and making sure it's the most. I also like consider myself with my own team an efficiency expert. I'm the first one who's like, I found this new AI, it's going to cut
Mm-hmm.
our this, it's going to do that. But I think when we hand off something with an expectation they're going to know what to do and how to do it, we're going to be disappointed and it's going to be friction. So having those clear components, I also really love task management systems, whether you're using something like Monday or Asana. We use ClickUp, which to me is like a Bentley. It's very complex.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly helpful for communication, for so many things. And I see this all the time with team leaders that I do it and I do it fast and I expect you to do it that way. Well, is the task clear? Is that
Right.
realistic? Right? We just implemented a new workflow yesterday and I said, "We got to test it because I actually have no idea how long this is going to take now." So I was like, keep track of it, and then let's figure out what we need for each component. And my team is so well oiled and we've, cut and chopped anybody that can't hang with like the racehorses. They're like racehorse level. They're all little unicorny. Took me a long time to acquire them and they're just great human beings, right? Everybody's got to be a great human being first. But that's how you increase performance and make them happy too because they're feel good about it and they're achieving at a job at a level. So I think that's really not just clear communication, but are the tools in place so that you're both on the understanding, what the deadlines are, what the task looks like.
Very good. Thank you for stopping by and putting up with all my nonsense questions. But I would love to have you back whenever we have another subject that we want to tackle. This show, I want it to be something where we look at those little bits of business, and we kind of not didn't know we were going to talk about going into it, but we kind of got on the generational thing, which I think is hugely important because
Yes.
I do want my kids to live in a better world than I did. I do want my kids to do better than I did. I also want my kids to not be so whiny all the fucking time, and employees and stuff like that, because I mean, isn't that the crux of it? Is that, but I promise you that the silent generation thought the boomers were lazy. And then the boomers thought Gen X was lazy. Gen X thinks millennials are lazy. Millennials thinks Gen Z is lazy. Gen Z will think Gen Alpha is lazy. And this is a problem that's not going to go away. And
No.
with new technologies and new things, the only thing that we can do is understand that better, because the generation between 1700 and 1800 had about that much movement. In the world we live in, right? The generation between 1960 to 2020, it's a completely different unknown life, and it's only going to get worse. So I think if we bear down and focus a little more on this generational thing, then maybe we can have a little more synergy in the workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think ultimately, it's about good communication in the workforce on both ends. And, and that really is just like in any relationship, good communication can really heal things, can expedite things, it can do a lot of powerful things.
Hmm.
And I think that that's another component because our communication is moved to texting and other forms and having conversations which we all need, are increasingly important.
Absolutely. Well, where do we find you? Where do we get a hold
Yeah.
of you if we have questions? And this is the part where you get to pitch your wares and tell us
Yeah. Well, I'm
all
Dr.
about you.
Roseann everywhere. So it's DRROSEANN.com. That's probably the best place. But, I'm on all the socials, you name it, I'm on it. And, I really offer two lines of support. So I offer support for parents that are looking to improve the mental health of their child and their family, especially when they're neurodivergent or really truly have a mental health crisis. I am all about science backed, actionable solutions. And then I support corporations by doing keynotes and other types of trainings for different organizations, not just keynotes, but also professional development. You can find me there.
Absolutely. And my name is Ryan Shear. You can find my phone number on bathroom walls. I'm just kidding. So we are, you can find all of our shows at Small Business Delivered on the Small Business Delivered podcast network. We got everything from marketing to coaches to business breakthroughs to real estate. So go check us out on smallbusinessdelivered.com. Until next time, everybody.